Is it worth the difference? Is RAW really necessary? Hello and welcome to Intentional Photography. Thank you for joining me. Let's get right to it. If you remember last week, I was comparing the difference between program mode and any of the manual modes that you could use. I think I used aperture priority. That's usually my selection. And I compared the images that I was able to take with the camera in program mode against the images that I took. And as I was thinking about that, as I was going through processing, I thought to myself, well, am I actually being fair? Because, you know, you could take pictures in program mode and in RAW format so that you could manipulate them. So today I'm going to do it the other way around. I'm going to shoot as I normally shoot, but I am going to shoot in RAW format, but also RAW plus JPEG. So we'll both have both images to look at. As I promised, we're going to go down into the lower part of the property. It's a little bit more wild than some of the others, so I brought my trusty hedge clippers with me. I also have a cat that's sure he's going to help, which you've met him before. I mention it only because he won't leave me alone, and he's a bit of a distraction. So, a couple of things before we go down there though. If you think about shooting JPEG to me, because I started shooting film, shooting in JPEG is a bit like when you would just go out and shoot and basically just took snapshots, you dropped them off towards the end of the film era. You could take them to 1 hour processing and you'd have them back in no time. But somebody else, in most cases towards the end of it, a machine decided what the proper color levels were and what the pictures ought to look like. So you took the shots, you dropped them off, you got them back, done deal. You could post them in to all the various albums that were available. You could mail them, you could share them with a friend, all these other things, but it was a done deal. Once you pushed the button on the camera, you were done with the process. That's similar to what JPEG is. Sorry, the cat's trying to untie my boot. Similar to what JPEG is, because once you push the button, the camera has decided what it needs to look like, and the various software engines within the camera are going to adjust colors and contrasts and such as that. As I said before, the RAW image is a bit like a negative, a digital negative, if you will. Back in the day, there were people who had their own dark rooms at home. And so they processed the film, they printed the pictures the way they wanted the pictures to look. If you're familiar at all with Ansel Adams, and if you aren't, then I suggest that maybe you Google him and watch some of the things that he did. A good portion of how he made his images was because he printed his own images. He developed his own film and he printed his own images, so he had control over what that final image looked like. That's similar to what happens when you go into post-processing with a RAW image. It gives you that kind of latitude. So let's look today, taking exactly the same images, because the camera is going to create the RAW image and the JPEG at the same time. Is it worth the difference? Is RAW really necessary? Is the topic for this intentional photography. So let's intentionally find out, is RAW really necessary? So join me. I'm not sure what we'll find at the creek. It's been a week or so since I've been down there, and we've had a lot of rain, so it may have changed significantly. Sometimes it does. But let me pack up the video camera here. You'll see I'm traveling kind of light today, but let's go down and see what we can find in that area. And so, as promised, the creek. Probably not the best vantage point, but at least down here, I told you it was kind of wild and woolly. It does clear out down that way a bit, and we'll find ourselves down there, I'm sure, before it's over with. But this, just over this way, maybe 50 yards, is the outside boundary of my property going that way. I can still go up the creek a little bit, and it looks like there actually might be something to see down that way. But we're going to be a little bit limited for choice. I'd a whole lot rather be spoiled for choice. So unfortunately, it may be as it's had to be in the past few sessions that I wind up doing macro work with whatever may be down here. Now, if I'm quiet enough, I may be able to surprise a bit of wildlife. As I've told you before, about a third of a mile in that direction as the crow flies is one of the transfer rubbish stations for the county, and so sometimes there's some noise that comes there. But I think the wildlife's gotten fairly used to that, so there may be something in that area that we might accidentally be able to find, but I think it's probably going to be more in the way of intimate shots that we can get down here. But at least we'll have some kind of targets to work from, something different than usual, an area you haven't seen before. So let me set my mind and my eye to what there is available, and we'll work from there. And here we start getting into the more open, but as you can probably hear the traffic in the background, we are also getting closer to the front of my property. This opens out, and there's still a lot of undergrowth, but it's not the briars and thorns that I had in the other area. So let's see, is there anything here worth pointing the camera at? Well, unfortunately there was nothing to find. Even the cat got skunked. He didn't find anything to, I guess, play with. It was maybe his goal. This time, this spring has been a little bit strange. We've had temperatures in the mid-80s Fahrenheit, and it's just been really strange. In the past few nights we've had temperatures back down to almost freezing, so it's kind of stunted everything. Everything kind of shut down. So there's not much down at the creek in the grassy areas that are of any interest. Most everything, what little there is within the woods. And sure enough, as I was headed back up the hill to the house, I came across another set of ferns that are just opening. So they're the fern heads they're curled. And I stopped to get some close-up work of those. Well, I'll just show them to you now. something you need to keep in mind, or something I want to make sure you know, is that I did not refer to the JPEG images as I was doing my post-production work. All of those I went through and manipulated. I maybe increased the clarity a bit. I may have increased the vibrancy. I really don't like to oversaturate things. I've seen too many things on the web that look just completely fake because somebody's cranked the saturation up to 300%. That's an exaggeration, but still, you follow my meaning. The best post-production work you can do is what doesn't look like you've done anything. And so that's kind of my goal. So mostly what I've done is lifted some shadows. I don't like huge contrasts. You're going to see those are the main items that where my pictures from post-production vary from the things that came JPEG. I was actually interested to see that a couple were almost spot on. Just very minor differences between the JPEG image and what I finished with in post-production. But like I said, lifted the shadows a bit so there's a little bit more even contrast, although the shadows are still there. Added a little bit of clarity and maybe a little bit of vibrance to make the colors pop just that slight bit. That's mostly what I worked with. But that's a subject for another video. I'm not going to go into that much right now. But so tell me, what do you think? Is RAW really necessary? Go back, review the images if you need to. Scroll down and leave me a comment. Is it worth going through the problems or the effort of post-production? I have to say I really enjoy the post-production process, so it's not a lot of effort for me. But what do you think? Is it worth the effort, or are the JPEG images, are they good enough? Because these, unlike the program, hopefully I've made the case for getting off the program mode. These were all done in aperture priority, but as I said at the introduction, the JPEG and the RAW images were exactly the same. I just did the manipulation. So is it worth it? Is RAW really necessary? Leave me your comments down below. And if you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're interested in what I'm doing and would like to see all of my content, please subscribe to my channel. But most of all, thanks for watching.